We finally made a little bit of headway into optimizing our application, and we really could stop here, but I wanted to focus on some ways to make everything a little bit cleaner and optimized for change so that when we come back and add new features, this will be a lot easier to work on. So the first thing I want to do is implement Immer. If you're not familiar with Immer, it is honestly one of my favorite libraries. It's so nice, it's so simple. If we go to npm and type in Immer, we can go look up and see it. And basically what it does is it allows you to write immutable code, so code that does not mutate objects in a immutable way. So we can actually go to their homepage, to their README, and see what it's all about. It's really simple. Find the documentation. It's really pretty simple. The main core idea, you take your current version, then you kind of create this draft of what you're wanting, and you get the next state. So you're mutating stuff, and Emmer just figures it out and gives you a new copy of it, preserving things that did not need to change. That's a lot of words. That's probably pretty hard to wrap your mind around if you really haven't gone through and looked at it. So let's just see what it looks like in practice. So we can import Emmer, produce from Emmer. And so that's the first thing we want to do. And this is really the core of it. There are other things you can do with Emmer, but this is the main thing. And so what you can do is you can wrap a function like a reducer inside of it. So similar to react.memo, you're just kind of wrapping something inside of this. And so what this does is it'll take the state and allow us to mutate that state specifically. We're going to rename this draft though to make it a little bit more clear that what we're changing is not the actual state itself, but it's a draft of the state. This is again just a convention. You could keep this named as state or you could change it to something else. We also don't really need a default case anymore because by default, produce is going to return the draft, the mutated draft you got, and it'll change that. It'll compare it with the current version that you have and create that next version that you have. We also don't really want to return anything. We want all of these lines to be break lines. So if you did return something, Emmer would use that. But if you're going to mutate something, you can't also return an argument. So basically, we just want to break at all of these points. Now, we got a lot of ESLint errors, and we're going to get to those. This one we actually can return because we're just cloning the fake data and we're creating an initialized version of it. So we do want to disable this case where it says the default case because by default ESLint wants us to have a default case, and we're just saying it's okay. We don't really need that. So let's go ahead and do the remove item ones. That's a pretty easy one to change. So we're going to say draft.items and then .pop. That's really all we need. We can delete these lines and this should just work. So we're going to remove the item and it did work. So let's do the same thing with reverse. So we'll do draft.items. Again, like I said in the previous video, reverse mutates. So we're actually mutating the array itself. We'll give this a refresh and we can reverse and it works perfectly fine. Again, here though, we do need to say is reversed equals to the opposite of draft dot is reversed. I believe that's the name of it. And so now if we do it, okay, great, that's working exactly as we expected. So we can do the add item. This needs to be the same way that it is. We have to create a new item, but instead of what we have here, we can actually just do draft.items. Let's just delete this, dot push the new item. Needs to be one word. Oops. There we go. Needs to be one word, and then we're good. We just have that. We could even, make this a single line if we really wanted to, but yeah, that's a little bit overkill. We don't we don't need to quite go that far. Now, toggle choice, this is, the big complicated thing, and this is where Immer really shines when you're trying to do these deep nested, object manipulations. It's way easier to use Immer. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to get those items. We're going to get the item ID option. All that needs to stay the same. Now, instead of find index, we can just do find, and we'll call this item. It's no longer the index itself. Now we could say we can still do this check, but it's not going to be -1. It's going to be undefined. So if we didn't find any items, just don't return the draft, just break. We're done. We don't really need to do anything here. Right? We could also return, and it'd be the same thing. So once we have the item, we're going to so it's already been declared. Oh yeah. So we don't actually need this, do we? We want to get the items options with the option keys. So then we have that option, and we don't actually need to create this this copy or anything like this. Like all of this is way overkill, and really all we're doing is we're just changing the option value to the opposite of what it is. So we'll say option dot value equals the opposite of option.value because it's a toggle. And then we should be able to just delete all of this, give it a refresh, make sure nothing's broken, and it's all working exactly as expected, which is super cool. That was a really easy change, and we just like deleted a bunch of this complication and everything. So the last thing, let's make sure that we do reset data the exact way we want, because there's a couple ways that we could do it. This right now is just completely replacing the data that we had, but we actually want to go through and change all the values back to false, just to make it a little bit more, just show off the power of Immer really is all that we're doing here. So first we're going to say draft.isReverse. That is going to equal init values of isReverse. So we're not really passing anything to init here. We're just saying, hey, we want whatever that initial version is. So if this changed to be initialized to true for some reason, then we'd be using that. So that's the first thing that we want to do here. And then the second thing we want to do is we want to actually do draft.forEach, rather I should say draft.item, sorry, for each. So we're going to go through every single item, and we're going to get the options for the item. So object.values, because this is a it's an object. So item.options, each of those is an object. So we want to get those values, and then for those values, we are going to have to do another for each. And this is a double list, and that may worry some people, but honestly, it's really okay. This is not going to be the slow part of this application. The slow part is all the rendering and everything going on. There's only 3 options for each of them, so this is a pretty small thing. Don't worry too much about that. And then we're going to say option.value equals false, and we're just going to say, that's the default. We just know it in that case. That's the default. So now when we reset the preferences, let's see, it broke. So it's not happy. And Immer produce returned a new value. So like I said, you can't return and also mutate. So we needed to get rid of that line. That was the mistake there. So we can reset the preferences, and that might have been a little bit fast. We can reverse, and we'll see, okay, it deleted those preferences and it turned it off to reverse. But now it's not actually reversing anything. So we can say if, draft.is reversed, and we actually need to send this one up above, we're going to want to we can just do draft.items.reverse, and we'll reverse it first. So if it's not reversed, we're not gonna reverse anything. But if it is reversed, we will go ahead and reverse that before we do it. And what's nice here is, we can reset our preferences without actually breaking anything, and that's really nice. So once again, Immer just allows us to write mutable code, yet still maintain the purity of this function and not actually mutate the real values. It's also going to use the previous values we had. So we're going to take advantage of a lot of memoization techniques and whatnot, because if you didn't actually change the object itself, it's going to continue to reuse the same object every single time. So Immer is really just there to make our lives easier. And honestly, by accident, you end up getting a lot of optimization with Immer. Now, it does have a performance hit, so the actual raw JavaScript itself is going to take a little bit longer to run through all this, because it has to do, it has to create the draft, then it has to compare the draft to the current, and then create that new version of it. So there's a bit of performance overhead there, but again, that's really not where you're going to get the majority of your issues. The majority of your issues are going to come from big cards and UI elements and stuff re-rendering when you don't necessarily want them to, or when they're an expensive render in the first place. And Immer can really help you save you when that happens.